up all night.
Yes. We'll call to order the meeting of the postponed meeting of January the 4th to order. We'll ask Mr. McConnell, Councilman McConnell, to lead us in the invocation and then followed by the pledge.
Our Father in heaven, here we are. It's a new year. It's a new beginning. It's the opportunity to begin again, to have a fresh start, to look at our priorities, to re-examine them, to re-examine the needs, the wants, and the desires of your people. Please, Lord, help us make these decisions that are in their best interest, whether sometimes they like them or not. But give us the courage to do that and the wisdom and guidance that we need to make the correct decisions. Father, as always, we're praying for our brothers and sisters in uniform who are far away in faraway lands overseas, protecting us, protecting our freedoms. We ask that you bring them home safely to their families. And we also pray for ourselves, Father. The blessings that you have given us, we ask that you continue to give us. We face many challenges here in Ascension Parish, but we have so many good things going for us, and we're very grateful for those. And we thank you for all of these things. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Ms. Suzanne, please note that Councilman Dempsey Lambert is absent. He is on call pertaining to his duties working for the natural gas company. So we certainly want him to take care of his duties. Number 3, chair's additions. Any additions that need to be brought up tonight? I haven't been told any. No additions. Number 4, public comment period. Anybody in the audience wishing to make a public comment on any of our items, please sign in with our secretary, Ms. Patterson, and please note the item that you would like to speak on. At this time, Ms. Suzanne, do we have any presentations? None are noted. No presentations. Number 6, Parish President's report. Parish President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year to all of you on the council. And everybody was wondering about the meeting last week being postponed. And I had something to do with that. I called Chairman Valentine because of some of the forecasts and the weather and all we were receiving for that later that evening. So we've had it's been an interesting 3 weeks in a row with rain. But I want to commend our public works people and everyone who's been out there working. We ran the pumps a lot, obviously, and we're going to be paying some overtime and some extra fuel costs. But basically, overall, I think we did a good job considering the amounts of rain we received Christmas and New Year's and last weekend. And it looks like the forecast this weekend is going to be, even though it's kind of wet, it's going to be a whole lot better. So we appreciate that. But I want all of you to understand that George and I talked about that, and we thought it would be good to postpone that meeting because of some of the forecasts for that night. The other thing I want to report just briefly on, one or two of you are not in the finance meeting. We should be finalizing some plans here. We've really been trying to look at the structure of emergency operations in light of a lot of the new federal guidelines, and that's been basically ordered through the State Office of Homeland Security, the Governor's Office of Homeland Security now that it's called, and emergency preparedness. We have another interview tomorrow. We've interviewed several people now 2 or 3 times, trying to find the right person. It's becoming a lot of bureaucracy in this whole process. So we appreciate the patience. I know some of you have been wondering what's going on there. Dr. Kell has been working, really helping make improvements on the administrative side and cleaning up a lot of the paperwork throughout the system with the various agencies that's been working with the director. And one lady who's been there for many, many years because of some health concerns asked to be transferred. And that kind of set us back a little bit too, but we had to put her health first in that regard. So, and that's really what I'm going to report on. We have some discussions, obviously, we'll participate in, but we just look forward to a new year working with you.
Thank you, Parish President. Any questions or discussion? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 7, committee appointments. I have placed in front of you a memo from the chairman where I'm asking you to look at the committees that you wish to serve on. Also a commitment on you to serve on those committees. I'm not going to read it. As you see, there it is. Also, you can see the chairman, according to our policy and procedures, and Mr. Savoy did that the first year, is also to appoint the chairmanship. So that's why of each committee. So that's why I asked if you would like to be chairman of one of those committees, please circle that for me. And if you would, to give that back to me after the meeting tonight, and we can have some discussion. I'll be around if you'd like to have some discussion with me. We'll move on now to agenda item. Well, one more thing I need to do, and that is tonight I am going to appoint Mr. Savoy on all the positions that I held on those committees, so that in case there are some committees that need to conduct business next week before the official appointments come through, that they can continue their business, and Ms. Savoy will sit in on those committees. And I have so noted that in the committee places that I handed out for you, okay? Move on to the consent agenda. There's nothing on the consent agenda. We'll move to agenda item number 9, Utilities Committee. Mr. Chairman Jared Berger.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had some couple updates in the committee. One on the EID, the Environmental Information Document for the STAG grant. It is still at the EPA. We do not have it back yet. Waiting. Hartman engineer, who represents the Corps, calls every 2 to 3 weeks, checks on it. He made a call last week, and it's still sitting. So it's the only thing we had to report there. On the jail sewer system and surrounding areas, we had a small discussion. We do have another proposal coming in from GSA on that particular work and also scope. It's being reviewed by our DPW and also URS to confirm numbers and scopes. Hopefully we'll have that by next month's meeting and possibly make a recommendation to the council. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Berger. We'll move on now to the Personnel Committee. I was the chairman of that. Mr. Berger is also the vice chairman, and he will handle agenda item number A, removal of the ACUD board member number 1 board member. Mr.
Yes,
Berger.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm passing out a page from our policies and procedures, from our council policies and procedures we adopted when we first got elected. Tonight, the agenda item is the removal of Councilman Oliver Joseph. That's the recommendation. And reason being, page 6, item number 4. When you get it, you can read. This particular section says parish council members shall not serve on any parish boards, and that's the reason for this particular agenda item. We have offered a particular compromise. We do have a couple council members who serve on for instance, the Economic Development Corporation Board as ex officio members. You can participate in discussion but may not vote on particular agenda items. That particular compromise was denied, so therefore I offer a motion to remove Oliver Joseph from the ACUD number 1.
I'll second that.
Moved by Councilman Berger, seconded by Councilman Fontenot. Discussion. Mr. Thompson.
Yes. I understand we have a procedure and a policy in place, and but right now with Mr. Joseph being the chairman of the ACUD 1, the operator has resigned, who been taking care of ACUD 1, and right now is a pretty critical time. He also was doing the water in Water District in the Dalro area also. And because of that, I would offer a substitute motion that he stay till his term is up, till we find somebody who could operate that system on the west side of the river.
I'll
So you-
second that substitute motion.
Okay, Mr. Thompson moves substitute motion that Mr. Joseph remain on the ACUD Board Number 1. You said until his term is up?
Right.
Okay. And second by Mr. McConnell. Substitute motion, discussion.
Correct. So, what is the length of time?
I do not know.
About council term.
No, I'm talking, hang on a second.
Term on the board.
Yeah, Suzanne, you don't have that information with you. They are appointed in staggered terms. I know Mr. Joseph was appointed, was placed back on, so I'm not sure what his term or when it expires. Wait just one second. His term will expire on 8/17/2008. So the motion is for him to remain until 8/17/2008. And they got a second by Mr. McConnell. Discussion, Mr. Joseph.
Yes. I have asked for a attorney opinion, and the attorney opinion came back in favor that I could stay on the board until my terms is up. There's no conflict with the, I'll pass this out. There's the Attorney General opinion back. Also, the Ethic Board came back, and they also in favor of me staying on the board. According to our charter, I can do that, and that's why I'm staying firm on being a board member of ACUD 1. I have not broke any laws. I have not did anything wrong. The citizen of that community just passed a 10 mil tax for a $5 million project, and I would like to make sure that project is started, and I cannot see why this council would interrupt a project like this here. They have $5 million on the west side of the river, and the people are paying for it. This is the largest infrastructure project on the west side ever. $5 million, and the people are paying for it. And if I had anyone from the west side or anyone in that district of ACUD 1 have a complaint on me or the things I have done in that, I would see why. But at this time here, I do not understand why I'm trying to be taken off of this board when all I have done for the last 22 years have supported that community, supported the people, and have not broken, once again, have not broken any rules. And I think this is just more than just plain old good government, you know. We have more important things in this parish to vote on than this issue right here. And once again, I have to readdress it. I have not broken anything. If the state attorney general have looked at this here and said I'm good to go, Ethic Board have said I'm good to go, and if I can get the parish attorney to even make a statement on that and give a ruling on that from a legal point of view with this bylaw,
No legal or ethical violations by you remaining. You're correct on that.
Okay.
so that's all I have to say there.
Just for clarification, Mr. Joseph, it is not a matter of whether it's legal or not. The matter is it is a policy and a procedure violation of the council, and that's why it was brought forth. Just a clarification on Mr. Berger's motion. Mr. McConnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I've read the Attorney General's opinion stating that Mr. Joseph does have the right and the authority to stay on that board. He cannot appoint his replacement. He can't appoint himself back on it, but he does have the right to stay on, legally, to stay on the board until his term expires. Obviously, he can't reappoint himself. Also, ethically, the Ethics Board has come back with a ruling saying that there is no ethical violation, there is no conflict of interest for Mr. Joseph to serve on that board and to serve on this council in concurrent terms like that. And so I'm in support of Mr. Joseph staying on there. This board has done a lot of good work for the West Bank of the parish. and it is largely through Mr. Joseph's guidance and his determination and his tenacity, hanging in there, getting all of that stuff done. And I believe that the gentleman should be afforded the opportunity to continue that work, to make certain that that work is continued along the same line with the same energy as it has been. And I've spoken to Mr. Joseph about that. He does have his plan. He does have his team together. They are working as a team, and I think it would be deleterious to the progress over there for us to disrupt that team right now. Also, if I may add, I have the distinction of already having kicked Mr. Joseph off of the ACUD board. I've done it once before against my better judgment. It was a decision that I immediately regretted, and I took steps to put Mr. Joseph back on the board. So I've kicked him off once, and I've appointed him twice. And I've been there and I've done that, and I've got the T-shirt. I've spoken to Mr. Joseph about that. I've explained that entire situation. I've apologized to him, and he has accepted that apology. I believe for progress on the West Bank and to show respect for our colleague, Mr. Joseph, that we should allow him to remain on the ACUD board and let him continue that work that he has done so well for these past few years.
Mr. Barriger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, well, I'll add, I agree. Mr. Joseph has done a wonderful job, and he decided to run for council member, and council members' policies and procedures say you shouldn't serve on the board. That's why the compromise was made for the ex officio member, so he can still participate in discussion, just cannot vote. That failed, so that's the reason for the motion tonight. It's not that Mr. Joseph broke any laws. That's obvious he hasn't. He's done a wonderful job. He can continue doing a wonderful job as an ex officio member. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Ms. Fontenot.
Mr. McConnell, I was one of the ones that began the process to reinstate Mr. Oliver Joseph back on the committee because of his service and because of the great work that he has done. However, we do have some bylaws that we as a body adopted. When he ran for this position and won this position, he then vacated the position that he has on the board according to our rules and our regulations. This is the time for somebody else to step up to the plate and take over the leadership position that Mr. Joseph has experienced in Donaldsonville, bringing new leadership to Donaldsonville. I remind this body that I was not allowed to serve on certain parish boards because of the rule in place. And so if we're going to follow the rules, we need to follow it all the way across the board. Some of us should not have to pay while others are allowed to do so. So and that is the reason why I second Mr. Barriger's motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hillensback.
Go ahead. Let Mr. Shea.
Councilman Hillensback.
Okay, thank you. I also think that Mr. Joseph should be allowed to continue to serve. I know he's passionate about representing the people over there on the west side, and he has truly done an excellent job on that ACUD board. I mean, it's amazing the things that's gotten done under his guidance and direction. And I guess we haven't always followed these bylaws. I mean, the bylaws were violated in December of '04 when we had two elections of the chairmanship and vice chairmanship in that year. We had an election in January and we had an election in December, and I objected to that, and I pointed out the bylaws were being violated, but guess what? It stood. So I disagree with you, Ms. Fontenot. We've not always followed our bylaws, and I'll close with that. I'm in favor of Mr. Joseph being allowed to serve.
Mr. Shake Snyder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's unanimous agreement around here. Mr. Joseph has done an exemplary job of West Bank. Thank goodness
is something I'm also very proud of, that the West Bank has and yes, we're going to make a description, because even though some people don't like it all the time, we will designate an area. But the West Bank has gone out on a limb and voted to spend the money to put water infrastructure in that area. Mr. Joseph has been a leader behind that. He's not the only one. There's a number of other people that have been working with him. The councilman on the West Bank, in conjunction with the councilman with the blessing of the councilman on the East Bank, has been encouraging and helpful whenever possible. So it's a team thing. I very much would like to see him stay involved. I think he's a driving force. It's a good person to be around. But I also believe we need to follow rules and regulations. I don't have them. And so I'm very much torn by this. This is something that we have a good person here. It's also something that when you run for councilman, you make choices. And you do things, and there's things that I'm doing now that I wouldn't do before, and there's things that I want to do before that I'm doing now. And so those are things that happen. I want everybody to know that ACUD was in good hands, is going to be in good hands. We're going through a bad time right now because our guy that runs it has taken a new job. So we have no operator. And we're going through a tough time right now, and they're trying to work that out. We and Oliver met Monday with Ascension Water, and on a temporary basis for 90 days, they're going to be serving as operations and assisting the ACUD to try to keep them running. Everything's going to be fine. We want to assure everybody. And then also assist them in long-range plans once an operator is obtained, to help train them, get them the operation certificate and all of that. So they do have a short-term and a long-range plan. I would like to, because of that, I would like to, for Mr. Joseph, be able to see that through and let them establish an operator so they can continue to move on, and then help serve as an ex officio member. And his passion for ACUD, I'm sure he would be very good, and he could continue to do the things that he's doing. However, as we do on it on the economic development, we do not vote on those issues. So I would like to offer a compromise and a substitute, in that
you can offer an amendment
to the substitute motion. I'm sorry. And they said that stay on, and as Mr. Thompson said, the object is to stay on until we can get operations in order and do things properly. And I agree with that 100%. We have a short-term clause, a 90-day clause, and then going into a long-term after that. And so I would think that 120 days, which would give us 4 months, Mr. Joseph could bring somebody in. He could help train somebody. He could help assist in getting qualified people on the board to continue operations. And ACUD could continue to move forward, and he can be there as long as he wants as an ex officio member. And I would like to see that put forth. We hate to see things change. Everybody's scared of change. And Nick Saban left LSU, and they're still playing football. They still have a football team. And so people are replaced, people change, and I think the West Bank can come back, and through his help, through the councilman's help and everything, we can continue, because if we're completely limited to one person, then I think there's some good people there, and with his help we can get ACUD to the right level. And so I'd like to offer that as a compromise, that after 120 days, we find our replacement at that point.
So your amendment is State your amendment.
is to, for him to continue serving in that aspect so we can transfer for 120 days.
Okay, so
Or until we name
the
somebody.
amendment to the substitute motion would be that Mr. Joseph serves 120 days or what?
Until we name.
Or
the
until we
replacement.
name a successor in
Right.
his place. That would override the 208. Do I have a second on the amendment?
I second the amendment.
Mr. Lambert, Todd Lambert seconds the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Mr. Joseph.
I just got a question, legal, if you don't mind. According to this here right here, and recently we just changed, I think that's East Ascension Drainage Board. And they become an economy board because they don't fall under the parish president anymore. And it's just like the board I'm on right now. So would all of those councilmen be in violation of this bylaw?
I don't believe it's state statute. There's a specific, East Ascension Consolidated Gravel Drainage District is formed by a specific local
Speak in the mic.
statute.
make
I'm
it
sorry.
hear on my-
I was trying to talk to Mr. Answer his questions. I was looking at him. There's a specific state statute. It's called the local rule, and that local rule appointed when it formulated East Ascension Consolidated Gravity Drainage District. It appointed all the members serving on the East Bank from this council as the members of that board. Same thing with the West Bank. They're just ipso facto by your election, you're also appointed on that board. So the legislature has, I guess, carved out an exception for you, if you will, allowing that to take place. So I don't think you violate any rules serving on the West Bank, and they don't violate any serving on the East Bank. They are ex officio. Excuse me, they are ipso facto appointed by their election.
Question.
Anything else, Mr. Joe? Okay.
No.
Mr.
No,
Hillsback.
sir.
How does that apply to ECUD? Because we're not really talking East Ascension Drainage District, West Ascension. We're talking-
ACUD is, that's a different matter. That's not statutorily created. He has no legal problem from serving on this board. The Attorney General has issued that opinion, and he has no ethics issues. So this is not a legal issue. There's no state law violations for him serving.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Any other discussion?
Just
Okay. Hang on one second. We're still on the amendment now. That's what we're discussing, just the amendment. Ms. Fontenot.
There's absolutely no reason for the amendment, or he can participate in that board just like I participate on the litter board and be just as effective. There is absolutely no reason for him to remain on the board until we appoint somebody else. He can still work with the board just like any of us can work with any board.
Thank you. Any other discussion? We'll first vote on the amendment. All in favor? Or do I have any opposition to the amendment? Well, the amendment is to 120 days. Okay? Let's have a roll call. Roll call on the amendment.
On the amendment.
Abstain.
Councilman Joseph.
He abstains.
Councilman Chase Knight.
Yes.
Councilman Thompson.
Oppose.
I'm sorry.
Oppose.
Councilwoman Fontenot.
I oppose.
Councilman Dempsey Lambert.
Opposed?
Councilman Savoy.
No.
Councilman Hillensback.
No.
Councilman Todd Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman McConnell.
No.
Councilman Byerly.
Yes, ma'am.
Amendment
Okay.
fails.
The amendment fails. Now we'll vote on the substitute motion. Substitute motion states that he could stay on the ACUD board number 1 until his term expires 8/17/208. Do I have any objections to the substitute motion?
I object.
Roll call, Ms. Suzanne, please.
assume Councilman
Abstain.
Joseph is going to abstain.
Yes.
Councilman Shakes Snyder.
Object.
Councilman Thompson.
Yes. Never stay.
Councilwoman Fontenot.
No.
Councilman Dempsey Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman Savoy.
Yes.
Councilman Hillinsback.
Yes.
Councilman Todd Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman McConnell.
Yes.
Councilman Barga.
No, ma'am.
6 yeas, 3 nays.
Passes.
Okay, the substitute motion passes. Mr. Joseph will serve his term on ACUD board until 8/17/208. Okay, we'll move on now to agenda item number 11, recreation. Mr. Oliver Joseph.
We had no meeting last month. No.
Nothing to report. Ms. Fontenot, Transportation Committee.
Yes. The Council Transportation Committee did meet last Tuesday, and those items needing council attention will be placed on the next council agenda. We did get an update from Mr. Kent Israel on some state projects, and I'm going to hand them out to you members here. These are all of the projects that will be let from now until July 07. Mr. Kent also gave us some updates on the airline. I had many people that had been emailing and calling about the fact that it appeared that the current construction on airline had come to a halt. Having asked DPW and URS to investigate this matter, Mr. Israel reported to the committee that the Department of Transportation said that the contractor had returned to the project to fix the medium crossovers and turn lanes on airline. He also reported that the final course of asphaltic concrete will be placed later in the spring when the weather permits. The Transportation Committee meeting can be seen live on the second Tuesday of the month at 6:30 on Cox or ETEL Channel 21, or you are welcome to attend here at the Courthouse East Chamber Room. You can also view our meetings by tape delay or by viewing Channel 21 on Cox or ETEL or for the schedule at that time. We are thankful for the needful construction, but ask that you watch out in those areas, be patient and heavily slow down traffic, and arrive at your destination safely. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Fontenot. 13, the Strategic Planning Committee.
If I could, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry.
Could I comment on a brief update on the Transportation Committee report?
If you like, I'll give you a few minutes.
Just going to be a couple. You only need a few.
Okay.
You will be receiving shortly a complete report from Department of Transportation and Development on all the state road projects in the parish, and it will be pretty inclusive. And I've written 2 or 3 letters recently back and forth between the governor and the DOTT emphasizing the importance of these state roads being addressed, those that have a capacity need as well as those who have a rehabilitation need. And so I've got a preliminary report the last day or so. They're going to give us a complete report in the next few days. As soon as we get that, you'll all have it so you can see those roads in your districts that will be impacted and what dates they anticipate. And we're going to put that on TV so people know this is when it's supposed to be done. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, I have
Yes,
a
Mr.
question on the roadway lighting projects, LA 30 and LA 44. Are we getting state funding on that?
That was in the transportation meeting. I know you missed it.
I missed
We had
it,
a
yeah.
discussion. Well, Ms. Fontenot will fill you in after the meeting.
I'm just asking, is that coming out of the general fund?
We'll talk about it after the meeting. Okay, Mr. Shakes, now the strategic plan.
Thank you. Well, we hadn't had a meeting since the last meeting because it was postponed, and the only thing, I have some comments when the burn orders come up from the fire department.
Okay. Item number 14, the Finance Committee, Mr. Barriga. Or Mr. McConnell. I see your name down here, but I guess Mr. Barriga.
There was no meeting, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
All right,
We'll hear
thank you,
about it
buddy.
next time.
General business, agenda item number 15, the acceptance of bids. Ms. Monty Burrell, purchasing manager. A, we'll talk about the oil and grease bid first, then the London Fogger bid equipment.
Good evening. On December 19th, we received bids for oil and grease. One bid was received from Roland J. Robert. We recommend accepting their bid.
Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Todd Lambert. Discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes.
Okay, on December 27th, we received bids for London fog equipment for mosquito control. One bid was received there, and it's from Adapco, and we recommend accepting their bid.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Councilman Barriger. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burrell. Agenda item number 16, the introduction of an ordinance. Introduction of an ordinance to control the outdoor burning of trash, waste, refuge, vegetation, and other combustible materials in densely populated subdivisions within the parish of Ascension. So for introduction only.
I move to introduce the ordinance.
Moved by Councilman McConnell, seconded by Councilman Scheck-Snyder. Discussion.
Yes. The introduction of the ordinance, I mean, the ordinance was introduced pending information received from the fire department, and we've received some information, some suggestions by them, and I just wanted to inform the council before it goes out for the next 2 weeks that of their concerns. Basically, and Mr. LeBlanc is here if he wants to comment on it. So everybody would know what's...
I'm not
Mr. LeBlanc, even though you're not on the, didn't sign a card, I will yield to Mr. Scheck-Snyder's wishes and allow you to speak to address the council.
And if I'd have known I was speaking, Mr. Chairman, I would have signed a card.
I understand.
And Councilwoman Patno and Parish President Hughes and the rest of the council, thank you for allowing me just to speak. All of you should have received an email from me in the last 2 days in reference to the burn ordinance that the Santa Maria Fire Department and Ascension Parish Fire District Number 1 reviewed the ordinance. We definitely want, and I don't want to paint no ugly picture here, but we definitely appreciate the ordinance, and it's definitely a move in the right direction for us. I would just appreciate, and I would ask that anytime items like this are brought up in the future and they involve fire, that we get fire a little bit more involved. We got 3 excellent fire districts in this parish, and a lot of knowledge and a lot of skills there that could have really probably answered a lot of these questions that we got tonight. Probably could be in the ordinance right now. We wouldn't even be talking about this. I'm not going to brief the whole email I sent y'all. I'm sure most of y'all got it, but I mean the biggest problem that the biggest concern that the fire service has is the enforcement. I mean, y'all know the volunteer fire department's going to get called when Papa Joe is burning trash in his backyard next week, and we're going to get called over there, and we're going to get asked to put it out, and then the volunteer department's going to get caught in a catch-22 between 2 neighbors arguing about somebody burning some trash. And then the biggest problem is the enforcement. We need to know who is going to be the enforcement agency. The volunteer departments can't be the enforcement agency. Is the sheriff's office going to be called out? Is a misdemeanor summons going to be issued to those people? Does the parish have a code enforcement officer that's going to get called out there? You know, that's the biggest thing. We don't want the volunteer fire departments caught up between Papa Joe and Mama Sue arguing about somebody burning trash in their yard. So that's the biggest thing. I'm not going to go over everything else, but, you know, fire departments were concerned about if they get paged out to put out this fire, can they charge the individual since they're going to be caught in a catch-22? That needs to be something that might be talked about. Also, one other concern was what is definitely the definition of densely populated subdivision? What is the definition of that? We're concerned about that. But we do want to go on record saying that we support the ordinance. We just need some, I think we need some fine tuning, and that's what's bad. When you start fine tuning around here, then you start putting things off, and then they get put off, and then you got to come back months later and try to fix it. But I hope most of y'all read my email that I sent y'all. We didn't have a problem with the 500 feet. We didn't have a problem with the 1,000 feet. We even compromised a little bit on the 300 feet, you know, because that's what the city of Gonzales does, and that's what the city of Sorrento does, so we compromised there. But just keep in mind, you got some excellent volunteer departments in the Ascension Parish, when you're working on something like this, get them involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Babin.
I just wanted to, if we were going to make some significant changes, I'd like to get those to avoid what like the drainage ordinance situation. If we could make some significant changes, that we not schedule a public hearing until we have a final, good, clean draft that you all can look at before. I just wanted to, if there's, I was going to stand up here and tell you that some of the fire department, Chief LeBlanc and some other fire service folks has asked us to make some concessions or some changes to the ordinance, and I did not want to try to be doing that at the last minute when the public hearing to make a really confusing ordinance. So whatever action you take, I'd ask that we could get a clean copy to you.
All right. Thank you, Ricky. Mr. Shakes now still has the floor.
And that's why we wasn't able to get the information back from the fire department until a late date. And so that's why my recommendation at this point would be to take their information, go back and clean it up, and then bring it back, a clean copy back, for the next meeting.
Okay. Mr. Hill's back. Councilman Hill's back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree wholeheartedly with Chief LeBlanc that I also have a question about densely populated subdivisions, and I assume we're going to identify which are densely populated and which are not. Suzanne, I have a question for the Secretary. Did we ever get a response back, Suzanne, from the Sheriff's Office? I mean, I don't know how the enforcement of it would work, but I think they enforce any ordinance that we pass, but I certainly would like their input, and you might follow up with them again, just like we asked for input from the fire departments. And again, I just want to remind everyone, in houses in close proximity, we've got a lot of elderly people out there that have breathing problems. We've got a lot of children with asthma and allergies and what have you, and we just can't continue to allow people to burn plastics and oil and tires and all this garbage in the yard. This is about burning those products, not about burning your limbs and your leaves and that kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hillsback. Councilman McConnell.
Mr. Chairman, if I'm in order, then I would like to withdraw my motion of introduction, and but with respect to Chief LeBlanc's comments, I don't want to see this dwelling on and on. Is there some way, Mr. Babin, that
Why don't you put it as an introduction at your next meeting, or put it as an introduction at another meeting, and that way that when we introduce it.
Or could I offer it as an introduction? No, because and call for the public hearing in a month instead of calling for a public hearing.
You're right with withdrawing your motion. That'll be fine. And
You'll
what
be
we'll do,
introducing a bad motion. You don't want to do that.
what we do, Councilman McConnell, we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting. If we haven't ironed it out, we'll just won't make a motion on it then.
Then consider my motion withdrawn.
Okay, motion is withdrawn for the introduction of the burn ordinance. I would instruct Mr. Shakespeare to make sure that everyone and make sure if you did not get the email from the fire department to please read your email, look at that, get with Mr. Shakespeare, and let's see if we can get some of these things ironed out. Parish President, you wanted to mention something on this? First of all councilmen finished talking. Yes, Mr. Hill's back.
The second withdrawn.
Well, if he withdraws his motion, that kills it. Any other councilman want to talk on that?
Just real quick, one more thing. I mean, we do ask at the meetings for Mr. Parrington to contact all the appropriate entities.
Right.
And specifically the Sheriff's Office and the Fire Department, each time we have one of these things, and come back to us. And I've spoken to him on the phone. And so, we have been trying to ask to get all these other entities involved also.
Okay. Mr. Babin, did you have a point of order?
I just want to clarify one point. This ordinance, any ordinance that's adopted by this council that creates a rule that is violated, it's a misdemeanor punishable in parish court as any other misdemeanor would be, and that's how this ordinance was structured. He's right. There was no enforcement. We have no code enforcement officer per se. Laverne Bourgeois does all of it. Tries to. So I mean, there's no code enforcement officer. So I can't put somebody in here to say, they will be doing it. As it stands now, if you break a rule in here, Sheriff's Office can give you a citation and you could be prosecuted for a misdemeanor. That's how it's set up today. If that's not the arrangement you want, you need to get those comments to me and talk about with the administration an enforcement officer type of situation. So I'm just letting you know how it's set up now. what it does and what this ordinance does and does not do.
Thank you, Mr. Babin. Parish President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In according to your procedures, an ordinance has to be introduced by either a member of the council or the parish president. This is by mistake under me. I've really not worked on this ordinance a lot. So, Mr. Patterson, we need to remove that from whichever councilman is putting this ordinance forward.
That's coming out of strategic planning, so it should have been actually coming out of strategic planning.
Now,
am I right on that?
And it's something I know we've talked back and forth on for 2 years now, and I guess my biggest reason for kind of moving slow on it is the enforcement side of it. So we need to, I can tell you our law enforcement department in the parish does not have time to go around to backdoor fires, nor does our parish building department unless we're going to hire some more people. So as James pointed out, this is going to be an issue that's going to be a lot of civil matters between neighbors here if we don't really get this thing really right. So please take it off under my name, Mr. Parish.
Thank you, Parish President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll move on now to agenda item number 17. Planning and zoning recommendations. These are for review only. It does not say that on your agenda, I don't believe, but these are for review only. Number 17 is a zoning review ID 1631.06, track 1 for Kelly and Lisa Boudreau, located on the west side of LA Highway 431, approximately 800 feet south of LA 621, to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from medium intensity residential RM to mixed use. Agenda item number 18, a zoning review ID 1630.06, lots 2, 3, 4 of the Forest Lawn subdivision for Lakes of Ascension LLC and Vines Lake LLC, located on the south side of LA 621, located 800 feet east of Highway 73, to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from medium intensity residential to mixed use. Agenda item 19, zoning review ID 1628.06, lot 1D of the James E. Gore property for Ray Shakesnyder, located on the southeast corner of LA Highway 431 and Stephen Road, to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from medium intensity residential to mixed use. Agenda item number 20, zoning review ID 1629.06 of Lot 2A, Lot 3, Lot 4A-1 of L.W. Broussard property for Morris Daniel McMurray, Sr., located on the south side of L.A. Highway 933, approximately 800 feet east of L.A. Highway 44, to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from medium intensity residential to crossroads commercial. Those are all for review only. We'll now go into the public hearing and ordinance section of our agenda. Agenda item number 21, a public hearing to consider amending the Ascension Parish subdivision regulation to eliminate section 20.402, procedure B, for approval of final subdivision plats. Mr. Babin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the council, it reads to amend the Ascension Parish subdivision regulations section to eliminate section 20.20:402, procedure B, for approval of final subdivision plats. Whereas the Parish of Ascension has in effect a comprehensive plan of zoning, and pursuant to that plan, the parish-wide development code was adopted by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority, which became effective on June 1st, 1999. Whereas the Ascension Parish Development Code provides for a procedure for its amendment of the Development Code and related regulations and restrictions by initiation of the Parish Planning and Zoning Commission. Whereas the Parish Planning and Zoning Commission was initiated in an amendment to subdivision regulations to eliminate section 20:402 of the Ascension Parish subdivision regulations regarding procedure B for the approval of the final plat of subdivisions. Now, therefore, be it ordained that section 20.402 of the Ascension Parish subdivision regulations is amended to read as follows. Section 20.402, procedure B, repealed.
Chair will recognize a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Mr. McConnell, second by Mr. Todd Lambert. Public hearing is now open. Anyone wishing to speak on the public hearing? Does anybody disagree? Anybody wants to talk on the public hearing, please approach the secretary and sign in. No one?
Motion to close, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Barriger to close, second by Ms. Fontenot. Any opposition to that? So moved. Public hearing is now closed. Agenda item number 22, the ordinance.
Motion. Move the ordinance.
Ms. Fontenot moves to move the ordinance, second by Mr. Thompson.
Discussion.
Discussion. Mr. Barrett.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, may I ask Mr. Brock something for clarification on this particular item?
You betcha.
Mr. Brock.
Mr. Brock?
You can speak right there, Lance, if you want to.
Yeah, mic works.
Mr. Brock, is this amendment to an ordinance dealing with the ability to bond out a subdivision?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what exactly, correct me if I'm wrong, but right now, a developer or person doing a subdivision, before the construction is complete, they're able to post a bond guaranteeing that the infrastructure will be done and pre-sale lots, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The Planning and Zoning Chairman talked to me about this and stated the reason for this actual ordinance is because sometimes the subdivision inspectors can't get access. Well, just make them provide access with a temporary road. Just don't do away with an ordinance that's been working for years. It is my thought process here. So I'm not going to support this particular ordinance.
Okay, that's it, Mr. Barrett.
That's it. Thank you.
Mr. McConnell, you had a comment.
Well, my question was, and I know I read all of this and it was presented to us, but Lance, if you could enlighten us, what was paragraph B there that we're deleting? What did it say? What do we?
Sure. It was bonding out subdivisions. What it is that you can bond out a subdivision prior to it, I guess, fully being developed. The engineer review agency sets a bond amount for 125% of it, and then that amount is bonded, and then they have, meaning the Planning Commission, if the developer bonds it out, they can get final approval based on that bond, the subdivision.
Whether or not it meets...
no, it has to meet, I'm sorry, yes, sir.
It still has to meet all of our subdivision requirements.
That's correct, yes, sir. It has nothing to do with that. It just has to do with when they can start selling lots, basically.
And what was the purpose of repealing this? What was the problem that brought this forth?
I think that, to tell you the truth, I think what Berger stated earlier, if that's what Michael Marchand stated, I guess that's the reason, to tell you.
Anything else, Mr. Conlon?
No, thank you.
Mr. Hillensback, Councilman Hillensback.
I'd like to ask Mr. Brock and Mr. Bourgeois, are y'all in favor of what we're doing here? Do you recommend that we go forward with this?
In other words, Councilman Hillensback, Lance is asking if you have an opinion.
They're going to take the fifth.
Okay, no opinion, Mr. Brock. Mr. Bourgeois, do you have an opinion?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, neither one of them want to have an opinion. Okay, anything else, Mr. Hillensback? Councilman Shakespeare.
Yeah, I think this is a fairly large issue because you're having people, whether they can pre-sell lots or anything, if we're fully protected by a bond, which my understanding is that they sell them, and if then things don't happen, they forfeit that bond. And they also forfeit their lot, obviously, from that. So the parish is not really giving up any protection that people will. The idea of not to be able to sell lots in advance is to make sure we get the infrastructure. That's the only reason. Am I right, Mr. Babin? Is to protect the parish to make sure the infrastructure gets built?
Well, exactly. I mean, there's two procedures. You can build out, we inspect it,
right,
clear it for you, say
and
it's
you can
fine,
sell.
Then you can sell lots. The second alternative was to allow people to pre-sell lots to get financing or other things they needed to do to get it done. We would allow them to bond it at 125% of the estimated cost of the construction. So what they would do, that's exactly right. That was to protect. That's so somebody wouldn't get approval and finish at 50% or 25% or not do what they said they were going to do. There's some financial. There's a surety. There's somebody who can financially withstand for us to seize the bond and finish.
Has there been a problem in the past with getting people to complete subdivisions whenever they pre-sold lots?
There was in the far distant past, that was very common practice. Like in the 80s, there was many subdivisions that were approved by the Planning Commission that weren't built out, and they've haunted these two gentlemen to my left for years. But I think since that time they have pretty much been cleaned up, and I don't think it's a big problem of late.
No, sir.
Is the bond that is being issued adequate to cover the problem?
As far as I know, yes, sir.
So, and you said you had, I mean, obviously you said you had no opinion. Do you have any objections to this happening? Well, because, I mean, I have no problem as long as the parish is protected and the subdivision are built out properly, and in the long run they get final plat. Well, why can't we continue to do this? That's my question. Somebody please answer it.
Okay, hang on a second. All right, finish, Mr. Shakespeare?
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Savoy.
I'm not going to put Mr. Brock or Mr. Bourgeois on the spot, but I'm going to put the parish president coming from the administration. What's the administration's take on this?
I understand that this came from the Planning and Zoning Commission itself, Mr. Savoy.
Yes.
And to my knowledge, none of you have called me or them on it in the last 3 weeks.
My question is to you, where do you stand? Where does the parish president stand on this ordinance?
Go along the recommendation of the planning department. I'm not an expert in planning and development. My only concern is any way from a legal perspective, Ricky, that if the council passes this, are we putting the parish in a detrimental situation in any way?
A detrimental situation as far as getting the projects completed, or a detrimental situation?
I mean, is the parish being put at risk in any way? Are we lessening our building restrictions in any way?
No, sir. You're making it further restrictive on how to build out a subdivision.
Right.
Now, I'm gonna tell you, if they call me and ask me how to apply this thing, we are going to apply this prospectively only. If we've granted approval under this Procedure B, since we're talking legal risk, and we are going to apply this prospectively only. This is going to apply to subdivision plats that are filed forward. I don't think we can have made a deal with someone and then change the rules mid, not deal, negotiations.
Negotiation, that's correct.
Sorry about that. I should have learned the first time. I'm going to.
Yes. Okay. Mr. McConnell, did you have your hand up? No. Okay, Mr. Hill, Councilman Hildenberg.
Ricky, you said a minute ago about protecting, but you didn't finish. I think you meant protecting the people. Excuse me. Are we doing anything here to lessen that protection of the people, the citizens of the parish?
No, sir. What you're doing is not allowing a bond or a sum of money sitting in the bank to guarantee the subdivision is completed. So the people you're protecting there are the people who buy lots before a lot exists. They're looking at a plat, and I want lot 34. Lot 34 is a piece of grass, hadn't even been constructed yet. That procedure is in place now because there's a bond to finish out the subdivision. But you're eliminating that procedure, so what you're going to have left is if you're going to build a subdivision, you have to completely 100% finish it up to scale, up to plan, up to plat standard, and then you can sell your lots. So you're not weakening, you're not undermining any public protection, you're just eliminating one procedure, which was the more, I guess, risky of the procedures, but had some practicality to it as far as getting it done. So no, sir, you're not weakening any public protection of a lot, of a consumer that would buy a lot, if that's the person you're talking about.
Right. Well,
yes.
I didn't mean to put them on the spot, Mr. Bourgeois and Mr. Brock, but I think all of us rely on their expertise in helping us make the right decision.
Okay. Any other discussion by any other councilman? Yes. Councilman Shake Snyder.
I agree with Mr. Hillenbeck and Mr. Savoy. I mean, we're here and we have different entities in the parish. You have people that work for different departments that make their own private recommendations or discussions. You have the planning and zoning that serves their purpose to make recommendations from their standpoint, and you have the planning department's recommendation. And from all of these, we need to decide what we should do and what's best for all the people. Right now, I still haven't gotten a planning department's recommendation, and that's what I'm looking for. You know, I don't want to put any of the workers on the spot. That's not our intention, but who recommends from the planning department on this issue?
Okay. I think Parish President has answered that, said it's his administration, unless he wants to put his gentleman on the spot, then that would be his call. But I think he said
He says he has no
the
objection
administration
to
has no
keeping it like
objection.
it is.
No, to the planning and zoning change.
Mr. Babin answered my
Okay,
question.
he asked, okay. Yeah, Mr. Barriger.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Valentine. Just another point. This really wouldn't even pertain to some fly-by-night developer, because if he is a fly-by-night developer, he can't afford to post 125% of the bond anyway. He has to be financially strong enough to guarantee 125% of that development. So this really only happens to your real reputable developers who do good projects, and it just helps them and helps folks trying to get in a home do it faster. Protection's there. You have 25% more than the original build-out protection-wise.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? Okay. Councilman McConnell.
And I'll make it real. Let's get down to the lick log. If we pass this ordinance and repeal this section, does that slow down the development of subdivisions in this parish?
Would it slow it down?
Yes, sir.
I can't answer that, but I can tell you it would make it more difficult to achieve that end.
Thank you.
It would be slower in the development of the subdivisions, and whether or not investors would adjust, I can't tell you that, but it would be more difficult to do it.
Okay. Just for all councilmen finish on this. Just for information from the chair, I did have a discussion with Mr. Morshaw, chairman of the Planning and Zoning. There is more to this ordinance than just the inspectors, and he promised to be here tonight, but he does work in the industry, and obviously he would have been here if he could have. I'm assuming that he's had some problem. But he was going to come here and answer you guys' questions, ladies, anybody that had one. And I apologize for him not being here because he said that he thought that it would be some confusion. But there was some discussion he and I had doing with the fact that when they have more than one filing, with the fact that they would complete the first filing, and then may not complete the next file until later on. Concrete trucks would tear up the roads because they didn't complete the entire infrastructure or whatever, which I understand the point, but they're going to tear it up anyway because they still got to go in there and pour concrete. But I wasn't sure exactly where the Planning and Zoning Commission was coming for that, and that's really all I have, other than the fact that inspectors, it was difficult for them to get to the houses because of infrastructure was not in place. It created some problems with flash floods, rains, which we've had, and the like. Any other comments? Yes.
I would like to speak with Mr. Marshall, and I know he has some background on it before we make a decision, and I would like to see us deferred until the next meeting so that we can listen to him, what he says. And make that as a motion.
Okay, moved by Councilman Shakestad that we extend the public hearing, second by Councilman Hillensback. Any discussion? Any opposition? So moved. We'll extend the public hearing on this particular item. Yes. Yes, it'll be on the next agenda. Yes, ma'am. And if you would, Ms. Patterson, make sure that Mr. Marshall gets a personal invitation from us. We'll go now to agenda item number 23. Public hearing to consider a 25-foot right-of-way located on Lot 3B of the Francois Deneau property, Ruth Ella Drive. Mr. Babin.
To revoke street right-of-way for Ruth Ella Drive located on Lot 3B of the Francois Deneau partition as shown on the preliminary plat of Moss Point subdivision. Be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Council, the governing authority for the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, in lawful session, hereby revokes that right-of-way designated as Ruth Ella Drive located on Lot 3B of the Francois Deneau partition as shown on the aforementioned map. All of the servitudes are remain reserved.
Move to open the public.
Second.
Councilman McConnell moves to open the public hearing, second by Councilman Lambert, Todd Lambert. Any objection? Public hearing is now open. Anyone wishing to speak on this agenda item, please approach the secretary and sign in.
Move to close, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Move to close by Mr. Dempsey Lambert, second by Mr. Todd Lambert. Any objection? No objection. Public hearing is now closed. Agenda item number 24, the ordinance.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Todd Lambert.
Second.
Second by Mr. Savoy. Any discussion? Any opposition? So moved. Agenda item number 25, a public hearing to consider a 10-foot servitude revocation along the eastern property line of Silverstone Estates, second filing, lot 29. Mr. Babin.
To revoke a 10-foot servitude running along the eastern property line of Lot 29, Silverstone Estates, second filing, shown on the plat of survey as Lot 29 and a 0.117 acre tract, Silverstone Estates, second filing for Gary Mock by Lester McLean, professional land surveyor, dated 10/30/2006. Be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Council as governing authority for the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, in lawful session. Hereby revokes that 10-foot servitude running along the eastern property line of Lot 29 of the aforementioned subdivision. All other public servitudes affecting said property are hereby reserved.
Move to open the public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Councilman Savoy, open the public hearing, second by Ms. Fontenot. Any discussion? Any objection? Public hearing now open. Anyone wishing to speak on this agenda item, please approach the secretary and sign in.
Motion to close, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Hillensbeck moves to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second by Councilman Savoy. Any discussion? Any objection? Public hearing is now closed. Agenda item number 26, the ordinance.
So move the ordinance, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Savoy moves the ordinance, second by Councilman Todd Lambert. Any discussion? Any objection? So moved. Agenda item number 27, public hearing to consider a 15-foot drainage servitude revocation along the eastern property line of Lot 6A and along the southern property line of 7A of the Charles W. Courtney property. Mr. Babin.
To revoke an existing 15-foot servitude along the rear or eastern property line of Lot 6A and along the rear and southern property line of Lot 7A since the servitude has not been used for any purpose. All utility companies and Ascension Parish Department of Public Works has provided letters stating that they have no objection to revoking these existing 15-foot servitudes. Be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Council as the governing authority for the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, in lawful session. Hereby revokes the existing 15-foot servitude along the rear eastern property line of Lot 6A and along the rear southern property line of Lot 7A as shown on exhibit map prepared by Ferris Engineering and Surveying that is shown as Lot 6A and 7A of the Charles W. Courtney property located in Section 9, Township 9 South, Range 3 East, Southeastern Land District of Louisiana, east of the Mississippi River, Ascension Parish, Louisiana, prepared by Christopher Ewing. Said servitude being more particularly described as existing 15-foot servitude along the rear eastern property line of Lot 6A and along the rear and southern property line of Lot 7A of the Charles Courtney property. The above described servitude of Lot 6A contains 11,310.75 square feet, or 0.259 acres. Lot 7A contains 25,379.7 square feet, or 0.5828 acres, more or less, and is being more particularly shown on the aforementioned map, which is attached hereto and made a part hereof. All of the servitudes are reserved.
Motion to open public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Todd Lambert to open public hearing.
Second.
Second by Councilman Savoy. Any objection? Public hearing is now open. Anyone wishing to speak on agenda item number 27 on this public hearing, please approach the secretary and sign in.
Motion to close, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Councilman Barriger moves to close the public hearing, second by Mr. Joseph. Any discussion? Public hearing is now closed. Agenda item number 28, the ordinance.
So move the ordinance, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Councilman Savoy to move the ordinance, second by Councilman Hillensbeck. Any discussion? Any objection? Ordinance is so moved. Agenda item number 29, Mr.
Motion to
Barriger.
adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Barriger moved to adjourn, second by Mr. Lambert. Council stands in adjournment.